Welcome back to Orbital Gate. Tonight with special guest, Farzad Varahramyan, creative visual director, concept artist, and co-creator of the video game Darkwatch.
Hi, my name is Farzad. My last name is Varahramyan. Most people don't pronounce it, so I just go by Farzad. Throughout my career, I've grew into the role of creative visual director at various studios, like a studio art director for multiple games. I started out, my initial passion and love was concept art, and that's how I got into the business. I saw Star Wars when I was, I think, 9 years old, fell in love with spaceships and aliens, and the rest of my life I tried to figure out how to do that. Over time, I discovered that there's such thing as fine art that can also then turn into a career for some people that were called concept artists. After my Bachelor of Fine Arts in Industrial Design in Canada, a friend of mine referred me to a school in Pasadena called Art Center College of Design. And they're very well known for industrial design and automotive design, but they're also known for such graduates as Syd Mead. And Syd Mead is one of the granddaddies of what a concept artist is, dreaming up things that were never imagined before and with the ability to sketch, design, and illustrate them. So I moved to the United States, Pasadena, California. I went there, got my Bachelor of Science Industrial degree. And along the way, I met a lot of teachers that were well-known concept artists in the video game business or film business at that time. I tried to learn as much as I could from them because back then it wasn't a formal major for concept art. I was in product design, and I had to go and individually seek out teachers that would do independent studies with me, like the great Richard Petrushka, Norm Sherman, and other instructors who did concept art on the side. Warren Manser was another one, Ed Natividad. They are still incredible concept artists in the business. After graduating, this was back in 1995, if you can imagine that. I don't think you were even born yet back then. The very first company I worked for was a game studio that had just gotten a contract to make their first game. It was called Kronos. One of my instructors ran that studio, and he hired me right out of school, even before I graduated, to be their concept artist. And I worked on their first game. They were a digital effects and animation studio before that. They had me working on their very first game for the very first Sony PlayStation, the little gray box. That was the very first thing I worked on. And then that's how my career started. And I did film concept art on the side, but my career really picked up in the video game business. Started out as a concept artist and grew into art direction, art director, and then creative visual director moving forward.
Right on. Well,
sorry if that was long.
Yeah, no worries. Well, you've had a pretty prolific career. You know, you've worked on a lot of movies and games. Real quick, I'm going to go on a quick tangent. You mentioned Syd Mead. I actually have the art book for Darkwatch with the foreword by Syd Mead. So
we're very fortunate to get that.
Yeah.
The book was published through Design Studio Press, and the founder of Design Studio Press is the amazing Scott Robertson. He's one of the, hands down, one of the best industrial designers, vehicle designers, world designers that I know personally. We did the art of Darkwatch through him, and I'd met Syd Mead as a student many times, right? It's kind of like meeting a demigod.
He's a legend.
And of course, Scott was on, and Scott Robertson was, pals with Syd Mead. And he said, you know what, we should get Syd Mead to do the forward to your book. And because of that, we got a chance to actually go to Syd Mead's house and hang out with him and, get a chance to talk. And he signed all of our books, got a tour of his amazing home and his studio. To step into his studio was, I can't describe, to see his workbench with all his tools, his pads of paper, his rulers, his paints, his brushes. And then his house was filled with his artwork that he's done over the years, giant murals, and then all these amazing products, industrial design products throughout his house. He probably designed half of them, So sorry, I went off on a tangent.
Yeah, no worries. Honestly, that's what I'm all about One more thing about Syd Mead is like I'm a big fan of he designed a Gundam.
Yes.
It has such a unique design. I think it's one of the few or only Gundams that was designed by an American. I make fun of like the mustache, you
Sure.
know. It has a very unique look.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what you get from Syd's work. It's you get something unique and beautiful and well thought out and so incredibly deeply thought out.
There's an elegance to it as well.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. So moving on to the next question. What was it like in the early days of High Moon Studios? You know, back when it was Sammy Studios and y'all were just starting out. Before Darkwatch had been fully realized, how did the game's concept take shape?
So what had happened was I had just left another great studio, Oddworld Inhabitants. I just stepped out. I didn't have a job lined up. And my friend Chris Alban, whom I mentioned earlier, he was the associate director at Oddworld. He had also stepped out at like a month after me. My friend Emmanuel Valdez at the time was working at Midway. And then he floated an idea later on to me that, he was leaving and he was going to start a company with a very mysterious but very important person. And this person remained very mysterious and anonymous until we met him. And it was John Rowe, who was also formerly of Midway. So John Rowe and Emmanuel had figured out a way to start a company and have it funded by Sammy of Japan. And of course, Emmanuel reached out to me. I reached out to Chris. Chris and I were like employees 1 and 2. We formed Sammy Studios with Emmanuel, John Rowe. In the early days, there was the technical director was David Wagner, a really wonderful, nice man, and very, very smart technical engineer. We eventually also brought in Paul O'Connor, who became an integral part of the brain trust of Sammy Studios. So myself, Emmanuel, Chris, Paul, people like Clinton Keith again. Clinton Keith was another amazing technical director. He came in and took over that role. And we were kind of like the brain trust of Sammy, which eventually became High Moon. Sammy was formed as not just a game studio. We were actually a publisher. And they wanted us to not only publish game projects, but also we wanted to have an internal studio development because we also wanted to make games, not just publish them. And during that time, we were working out of a tiny little temp office up in Encinitas. And I'm not joking, Chris and I literally worked out of a large broom closet. First of all, there was no air conditioning. We had no windows. If we wanted ventilation, we had to prop the door open. And there was a fan down the hallway that we would kind of like position to blow some air, hopefully would reach us eventually. So Chris and I worked out of that office. And that's how it all started. John was in the executive suite upstairs. He was making the big decisions and all that stuff, figuring out how to physically build and develop. And we were involved with all that. We met with architects, interior designers. At the same time as we're trying to figure out a game, we're also trying to figure out, all right, I'm going to need a concept team that's this big. We're going to need a cinematics team that's this big. Emmanuel's like, if we want to be competitive, we need to have, a motion capture studio in-house to do all of that. This is the kind of game designers and game developers we need, artists, 3D artists, all this stuff. So we're putting plans together, working out head counts, salaries, starting recruitment. It was a lot of work all at the same time. And my wife was about 8 months pregnant with our first son, our first child. So it was a very intense time. So initially working on all of it at the same time. And on the game side, that's probably the thing that interests you the most is we tried out all sorts of ideas and concepts. And of course, we would have very small team meetings. There was only like a handful of us at the time. Easy to get together, throw ideas out, have a great time laughing, joking. And then, of course, I would go and put pencil to paper and try and visualize the concepts that we're talking about. So a lot of early concepts, shooting games, driving games, third-person adventure games. Chris and I came from Oddworld, which was very character and world-rich IP developed by Lord Lanning, the amazing Lord Lanning. So that was our experience, and we're bringing that pedigree to the studio. So we were really trying to plant the seeds for building amazing, unique worlds. But at the same time, 7, 8 o'clock at night, we'd finally stop working or take a break before we work again or go late home to our families. So we're all playing Halo. I was terrible at it, but even I had fun playing Halo. And then a few months into this, one night, Chris and I used to carpool because we lived in the same neighborhood. Chris is like, what? Why don't we make a first-person shooter? We're all having so much fun playing Halo. Why are we not doing a first-person shooter? None of us had experience with a first-person shooter. But we're like, let's just try it. And, we went back the next day and Chris pitched the idea, and that was the very first beginnings of Darkwatch. It was because we're having fun playing Halo. That's how it all started.
That's awesome. I definitely feel a bit of the Halo DNA in Darkwatch with the regenerating health and,
yeah.
But I was playing it recently to prep for this, and like, when I try to explain it to my friends, I kind of compare it to like, okay, what if like Halo, but you're like a vampire cowboy and you have vampire powers? Yeah.
Watch out!
Darkwatch was originally this project called Code of the West. You mentioned earlier kind of the first-person shooter idea. How did we get from like Code of the West to Darkwatch?
Essentially, we wanted to have something different. We wanted to do something that was based in the Old West, maybe steampunkish, the ability for the characters to have really interesting and exciting weapons. For a first-person shooter, we didn't want you to reload a gun every 6 bullets, right? We wanted to give you the ability to have a lot of fun shooting with as many bullets as you wanted. So we had this whole like steampunk. At one point, we had the Chaz Bartlett. He was a clockmaker from New York. He goes out west, and of course, that gives him the abilities to like craft his own weapons and things like that. We're older guys, so we grew up kind of like with the Thunderbirds, the Wild Wild West, the original TV show. And we liked the Old West because it wasn't being used at all or as much for video games. And then the remake of the old TV show Wild Wild West came out with Will Smith, and it did not do well at all. And we immediately realized that we did not want to be compared to them because it would kill the project. I think it was mainly Chris who brought up the fact that, this is dangerous waters now. We still wanted to keep the Western, but we couldn't do the steampunk. Through discussions with Chris and Paul and Emmanuel, the whole idea of vampires came out. It was still very cartoony and steampunky. It's still stylized, but a little bit more adult. That was the beginnings. It came from not wanting to be compared to a movie that bombed that was potentially going to kill us because we were so close to it conceptually. So that's how the whole vampire and gothic part of it was introduced.
For sure. Well, thanks for elaborating on that. I am still a big fan of like the Code of the West designs. I think there is a quote from Chris Ulm saying about how like, this doesn't really make sense if it's first person. You can't see the character, so you want to be a cool guy in a first person game. I do think that the Code of the West concept would have worked so well for like a third person, kind of more quirky or something like Ratchet and Clank, with all these crazy weapons. But moving on, through that design process, we came to the character Jericho Cross, the star of Darkwatch. So who do you think Jericho is as a character, and how would he evolve over time?
Character development, it was very much Chris who was driving it. And I remember he came out with some key details and backstory and motivations that kind of helped us form at least the initial darker, more moody style and look to Jericho Cross. And I think it was something like his father was a slave owner and Jericho didn't like it. And his father committed a whole bunch of atrocities. I'm trying to even remember if it was his father who blinded him in his eye. My memory's a little bit foggy, but they had a scuffle and he ran away. And I think he joined the Union Army, fought in the Civil War. I think he deserted, fled out west, and he kind of became a robber, a thief, but a thief with a code of honor. And that kind of helped mature up Jericho, going from this more cartoonish evolution to still stylized, but now a darker, a more serious tone to him and the world.
That's something I really enjoyed reading the art book, is how, even if it's not really spelled out for you in the game, all these characters have like pretty cool backstories. I have the Darkwatch comic, which...
Oh, the heavy metal one.
Yeah. This one also goes into a bit of the backstory with Tala and Cassidy a
That's
bit.
right.
So that's something I find kind of fascinating about like seeing these characters. There's only ever one Darkwatch game, but like these characters could exist outside of that.
Yeah.
Do you have any? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, and if you look at I think the latter half of the art book, you'll see that we did a visual exercise of developing. I think it was called like Darkwatch Through the Ages, and Chris and Paul came up with the storyline of Lazarus going all the way back to when he was created was during the Roman Empire. That's when he started out, and that was also the origins of Darkwatch, secret society during the Roman Empire that arose to fight this evil vampire force that was forming. As a concept team, we developed designs for characters that progressed all the way from, we had like Roman centurions that were Darkwatch agents all the way through history, like during the Crusades, World War, was it one or two, I forget. And then we projected forward into the near and then far future. So we wanted to show Darkwatch as an IP that could cover so many opportunities, very much like Assassin's Creed, through the ages and the different times in the world that we could create for this IP. So that's why we did that exercise. I remember, and it was a lot of fun for myself and the rest of the concept team to kind of like imagine you would recognize a Darkwatch agent in Roman times to now and then to the future.
Yeah, that was definitely my favorite part of the art book is seeing the different concepts from different time periods.
Mm-hmm.
And also in the comic goes into this as well as like, what were the conflicts that were happening? And eventually it just devolves into like geopolitical struggle against humans and vampires. Vampires have infiltrated all these different world governments.
Yeah.
Everyone's competing. Yeah. It's like an arms race of like biological monsters and vampire weapons. And it's really cool. I think my favorite concept is the Night Stalker armor. And
like
it's
a mech suit.
Yeah, it's like like a Darkwatch Space Marine. I believe that was designed by Francis Tsai, and like that concept is amazing, and the art book was just awesome to read through.
Thank you, and you brought up Francis Tsai, and I just wanted to call out Francis. Over the years, we had an amazing team of concept artists go through the department at Sammy and then High Moon, and Francis was the backbone of that department. He was just an incredible talent, just one of the most technically proficient artists I'd ever met. And by technically, I mean, I used to call him the human plotter. He could sketch any environment like a plotter. I used to tease him that he would put his pencil down and move the paper around instead of the other way around. And he had perfect perspective, an incredible designer on top of it, an illustrator, and just a team leader that led by example and strength of character. And unfortunately, Francis is no longer with us. He passed away some time ago from ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. He passed away. It was a huge loss to our community and as a friend. But thank you for bringing up Francis.
Thank you for sharing that. I did some more research into like when I was going over concept art. I looked into portfolios of artists, and I saw a video. It was a news story about Francis. He was immobilized or paralyzed, but he couldn't he couldn't draw, with his hands, but he was able to use eye tracking technology, and he made some amazing work. And
he did.
He was an amazing artist and sounds like an amazing person too. So
yeah, and we were, and I definitely was blessed to have had the opportunity to work with him for the years that we did. I learned so much from him. I can honestly say though, his strength of character as a human being stood out so much. Just a wonderful person, and I have his artwork as magnets on my refrigerator. I see it every day, and I think of him every day.
Apologies, I didn't mean to bring up, but
No,
it's totally, it totally
no,
understand.
not
I
at
totally
all.
understand.
I'm
So
not.
no worries. And
No, it's okay. I apologize because I don't want to make you uncomfortable. I'm perfectly comfortable expressing how I feel about Francis.
sorry, I'm also a little nervous.
No,
I
don't be
didn't.
nervous.
I hope I didn't hit any buttons. So, but
You know, I've noticed that as I've gotten older, um, in a lot of ways, my emotions are a lot more on the surface. And if I'm happy, I'm really happy. If I'm sad, I'm really sad. And one of the things that is so important to me is my friendships and relationships. So no, don't feel bad or worry or anything. This is who I am, for better or for worse.
right on. Yeah, no worries. I'm also like, um, I've realized this about myself. I've accepted it that like I'm really bad at like hiding emotions. So like, I have a bit of social anxiety. I'm kind of nervous around people sometimes. So, but it's just like, hey, we're human. It's like, it's fine.
That's
Like
right.
we all gotta go through it. So
And just I have social anxiety as well. That's why I'm more comfortable working in this environment. And the years that I worked in the studio, it was exhausting. I would go home every night exhausted, and I couldn't figure out why I was so physically exhausted. But it was the energy, as you know, that it takes up to conduct yourself in an acceptable, courteous, social way all day long in an environment where your nervous system is bombarded constantly by social interactions. And those of us who have social anxiety, we have to work a lot harder to kind of to deal with that. So yeah, you don't have to tell me. You don't have to worry and be embarrassed or anything. I know exactly how you feel at the end of the day if you go and you have to deal with people or a crowded place or things. I get it. I totally get it.
I appreciate that. I definitely I know exactly what you mean.
There's hope for you yet.
So going back to the art book for Darkwatch, do you have any favorite characters or concepts that didn't make it into the game?
Yeah, there was this one character at the beginning. I was trying to come up with all sorts of enemy designs that would be fun to shoot and engage with, and that were not your usual vampires. And I was kind of thinking, and this is where my like industrial design training comes in, is like coming at it from a different angle to see if we see something, an opportunity we haven't seen before. So instead of thinking about vampires, I said, what else sucks blood? What are the other things that suck blood? And I did some research quickly, mosquitoes, ticks, mites, things like that, leeches. And mosquitoes was one of the things that stood out. So I did a character. I'm okay with the design, but it was a very thin character, so it wouldn't have been a lot of fun to shoot at. But I like the basic concept behind him. But what I loved about him was the name I came up with, which was Mosquiratu. To this day, that makes me laugh. Mosquiratu, which is mosquito and Nosferatu combined. That's one character that it just makes me laugh. You were mentioning earlier, working on things that you're passionate about and you're having fun working on. Coming up with that name for that character and trying to come up with a new definition of what a vampire could be was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun, all of us, designing some fun characters for that game. One character that I wish I'd gotten in was a Native American warrior named, I think his name was Red Moon. The whole idea was that he could become a Wendigo, which was a Native American creature legend. As game development, that's the problem. You never have enough time or money and deadlines coming down on you to get everything you want in there. So unfortunately, he was designed, but he was cut from the game.
I'm glad you mentioned Red Moon because I was going to bring him up later.
Okay.
One thing I like about Red Moon a lot is we can all agree Jericho is super cool, right?
I hope
But
so.
I feel like he doesn't have any friends. He's kind of a loner. I think Red Moon, like, there's got to be some bromance in Darkwatch, and I feel like that would have like added so much to like
Yeah.
the character of Jericho. Now he has something to lose.
Yeah.
Now his best friend is an enemy.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think of Darkwatch as like, you ever seen Samurai Jack, like the TV show?
Oh, long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorites, but great show. And I kind of I think about, there's the game Darkwatch, but much like Jack, I feel like Jericho, he could just keep going on adventures,
Yeah,
and meeting new people, and it'd be interesting.
yeah,
I think that would have been a great, episode or chapter of his story where, like, friends turn to
right.
enemies, or I think it would have made for some great character drama, but
I agree.
yeah, lots of great stuff in the art book.
And it's funny what you just said about Jericho seems like he doesn't have a lot of friends. And the image that popped into my head was the Darkwatch cafeteria. And Jericho always walks in and he goes and sits at a table by himself while everybody else is. It's just like back in high school again.
Yeah, even in the cutscenes, like in the game, it's portrayed how the other Darkwatch regulators, they don't really like Jericho. They're like, get out of my way, you blood-sucking freak.
Sniper rifle's perfect for a blood-sucking, shadow-hugging, low-down vampire rat like you.
There's some voice line you walk by him and like, yeah, none of them really like you. It's only like Tala and Cassidy who are cool with you, and there's a cutscene like he's shoving some guy out of the way, They don't really get along. He's kind of just doing what he needs to do to complete the mission and break the curse.
And beyond that, it was by design, right? I think when Chris and I think Paul were setting the character up, Jericho by design didn't fit anywhere. He didn't fit in with the vampires. He didn't fit in with the Darkwatch. The Darkwatch, the whole purpose of Darkwatch was to kill vampires. And he's basically a half vampire, a man without home that was kind of forced into the Darkwatch because of his specific powers now and because of his specific motivations. He didn't want to behave like a vampire. It was like back when he didn't want to be like his dad. You hit the nail on the head. Tala and Cassidy were the only ones. They were the kids in high school that, looked beyond all the reasons not to hang out with you, but saw the thing that kind of made you special. And hey, let's invest some time in this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a loner, but he's also, I think he's a bit of a rebellious character, like, sure, he might be kind of evil, but some guy's going to be a lot more evil than he is. And he's going to say, well, screw you. I'm taking you down. That's the way I think of Jericho.
That's right.
So I did want to ask about Darkwatch 2, and you can let me know how much you can share. I know you shared some on your website a bit.
Yeah.
My question is, how far in development was Darkwatch 2, and are there any new details you can share?
Yeah, Darkwatch 2 was quite a bit in development because we had developed a whole new prototype, like a playable prototype with full art direction implemented. The whole team just busted their humps developing the prototype, making it beautiful, playable, fun. We'd done a ton of concept work for it already. We had a sort of like a boss area developed for it. We were doing stuff in the latest Unreal Engine at the time. We were able to make it look a lot better than what the original Darkwatch was. And we had developed a whole new boss fight just to kind of pitch the whole idea and time frame and period. We were developing a near future Darkwatch where the world was kind of going through that, what you described earlier, which was like the vampires that permeated, and it was a full-on global war now. I got a chance to redesign the steam wagon. We called it the Hellion, which was this car designed to kill and destroy and eviscerate and pulverize vampires. That was in the demo. We switched from first person to third person. We had an initial redesign of Jericho. The outfit was different, and a big bad guy, vampire monster thing that he was fighting in this arena setting that we developed. Contextually, what had happened on the business side is Sammy had become the sort of like the parent company to Sega. Sega was a well-known publisher. We were Sammy's publisher. And now there was a company, Sammy, that had two publishers. That became an issue because Sega is like, well, you don't need two of us, and we're Sega. So let's just dismantle Sammy US and absorb the people we want into Sega, and then the rest can be let go. It wasn't going to be like, hey, let's hold hands together and build stuff together. It was like, no, we're going to take over and let's move along. When Sega wanted to shut us down, John Rowe went to Japan and said, hey, sell the company to me. He talked to the chairman, Mr. Satomi, and he had a personal relationship with Mr. Satomi of Sammy. And he said, sell the company to me. My people have worked really hard. Don't let this fall apart. It's a great group of people. We have a great product. If Sega doesn't want it, we'll buy it away and we'll develop it. Satomi-san, very honorable man. Any CEO of a company could have just said, you know what, on the books, that doesn't make sense. But he said, no, okay, yeah, here you go. John, you were honorable. Thank you very much for your service over the last 6 years. You can buy Darkwatch and the company. And John bought the company, and he paid for it himself for a few months until we landed Vivendi. Vivendi came in, and they bought the studio. And they bought us not to finish Darkwatch, they bought us to develop the Bourne Conspiracy. But that gave us the ability to finish Darkwatch, and then we published it, I think, through Capcom and Ubisoft in Europe. But what happened is then we became one of the companies owned by Vivendi Universal. And then after some time, Vivendi Universal bought Activision. They already had Blizzard, but they bought Activision. And Activision is a huge publisher. We were just one of the studios in their portfolio. And again, it was the same thing. They came in, and then they basically said, we don't do original IP. We have licenses that we want you to work on. And I believe it was Transformers. In a couple hours, they killed Darkwatch 2. And the team was immediately retasked to do Transformers. Myself and the other founders of the company, myself, Manuel Valdez, Chris Ulm, he saw opportunities in mobile app development at the time. This was around 2008 with the iPhone, when the iPhone came out. They said, this is someplace that it's green pastures. We need to go there. Paul O'Connor and myself, and Manuel Valdez, and a couple others who decided to follow us, we went and started our own Appy Entertainment, and we got into mobile games. And it was funny. We had a dinner with the Activision executives, and at that dinner, they basically said, we don't invest in original IP development. We said, well, but what do you mean you don't do original IP development? He goes, well, we don't invest in the risk of it. Once there's an original IP that's successful, we'll go and buy it. And that's what they do. Activision goes and buys successful original IP. And then, they develop it for years and decades to come. So that was the main reason Darkwatch 2 never got made. Good luck editing that into a concise little...
No worries, I'll do my best. Okay, I do have a quick question about Appy. Who is running the Appy Twitter account?
So our marketing director at the time for Appy was Paul O'Connor. So Paul O'Connor...
It must be him, because it's still active.
Still active.
Yeah. There was a tweet like this, like last year. It's some goofy thing, like just for fun, but I just thought that was funny, but we can move on.
Yeah, Paul is one of those people who's a bona fide genius. I'm not just saying that as hyperbole. His IQ is way above average. In any meeting I've been in that he's been in, he's been the smartest guy in every single one of those meetings. Nobody will know it, but he is. And Paul, basically, when we started Appy, Chris is like, we need a marketing director. Marketing is going to be a very important role. He went and read like 3 or 4 books over the weekend, watched a bunch of videos, and then, within a month, he was doing all of our marketing and figuring out strategies. I can't speak high enough about Paul O'Connor, Chris Ulm, and Emmanuel Valdez. And then we had two amazing people followed us from High Moon. Steve Sargent, who was our executive producer there, he followed us and came with us to Appy. Steve Sargent has shipped more games than all the other people in our group of circles put together. He's this big British strong guy. He's amazing. And then, of course, our technical director that followed us all the way from Paris, he's French. We tease him all the time. Marc-Antoine, one of the smartest programming minds I've ever worked with. Let's not forget also like Rick Olofsson, chief financial officer over at High Moon. He came with us. We spent every penny like it was a quarter. He made every penny work as if it was a quarter. That's hard to do. I don't want to forget Emmanuel Valdez. Did I mention his name? He's the one who originally brought us into Sammy. And he and I met and we were friends at Art Center. On the art side, it was just me and Emmanuel making games. And thank God, Emmanuel is a game director, art director, technical art director, all wrapped up into one. He's amazing. We formed Appy, and that was our group. All of us and Chris. But Chris was the guy who saw the opportunities. Chris always saw like 2-3 years ahead. He's like, that's where we need to be.
Well, I feel like this perfectly ties into my next question, which is, how has working as a creative director or concept artist changed over the years? Is the industry a lot different now?
Yeah, it is. I would say if you are working on a small indie game That's probably closer to what video game development was 20, 30 years ago. Now, with the larger financial bets, all the pressure, working for larger companies, gigantic teams, it's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of work done to make nervous people less nervous. I'm talking about investors and executives and things like that. Developing the actual game and the cost of developing the game was a drop in the bucket compared to the 24/7 support and marketing plan, marketing spending dollars in making sure that people found your game, then played your game, and they stuck to your game. So yeah, it's changed a lot. I think as an art director, there was a time where you had a lot more ability to exercise a unique vision. Collaborative is a good thing. It also, if it's not done properly, and if the experts in each group are not allowed to do what they're good at, you produce a lot of stuff that's watered down, and it's kind of like taking just great lemonade and just keep adding water to it. It has changed. In my opinion, some of it is better. Creatively, though, original properties, creative directions are a lot harder to accomplish and have people be willing to invest in it. It's risky. It's all risky stuff.
100%. Kind of what you mentioned earlier, something I'll say when talking about games is how the mid-budget games from like the 2000s or early 2000s, that's kind of like what a lot of indie games are now. As games get bigger and more complex, I imagine it could be harder to like have a more focused creative vision. That's why I love trying out like new indie games, because I feel like just so much like innovative, fun ideas, like very diverse art styles too.
Absolutely. That's where the innovation is happening. It's not happening in the big studios. I think in the big studios, there's a lot of technical innovation because they can afford the technical innovations, right? Like the Spider-Man games that came out, they're amazing technical achievements, artistically as well, but technical. To fly around these gigantic New York City, look in any window and seeing a living room,
I love the Insomniac Spider-Man game.
Yeah. So the larger companies have huge advantages, right? But I feel that the smaller indie games, smaller funded games, that's where at least visually, there's greater possibility for innovation and risk taking.
Absolutely. Well, I think this ties into another question where we did kind of touch on this a little bit. Over the years, you've worked together with the other co-creators of Darkwatch. Sounds like you still keep in touch. If the stars aligned, would you ever return to Darkwatch or a new IP with the same key people?
In a heartbeat. I can't stress enough. This is something my father told me years ago growing up. He said, once you find somebody that's really good at what they do and they're trustworthy and they're good people, never, ever let them go. Whether it be your family doctor, your grocer, the person mowing your yard, if that's what they're doing. Those relationships are hard to find. And once you find them, nurture, grow them, and maintain them. My friendships and relationships that I've formed in the game industries are absolutely the treasure I've taken away from my career. And the handful that I continue to work with, I just had lunch with Paul the other day. He's still down the street from me. Chris, I had dinner at his house. We played board games with our families 2 nights ago, Wednesday night. Emmanuel, I see then every so often. He's 15, 20 minutes away from me, and then Sarge is an hour north of me. Marc Antoine is actually down the street from me. Rick moved down to the East Coast, unfortunately. But I don't know, maybe he'd fly back if the opportunity was right. I would work in a heartbeat with the people I just mentioned and a few more as well. People that we hired and developed over the years. We're still good friends with a lot of them. We watched their careers grow and improve and surpass us with great pride. So I would love to work with my team that we did Appy again. I would do it in a heartbeat. And Darkwatch 2 would be great.
As much as I would love Darkwatch 2, sometimes you might move on from certain things, but if you have the right attitude and, are working with the right people, it's going to be amazing, and
it's magic. It is pure magic when that happens.
I'd rather see you guys just like go out and do something, whatever the heck it is, rather than, what if Activision decides to bring back Darkwatch it wouldn't be the same, you know?
No,
Um,
no,
I don't think that's very likely, though, so we
no,
probably
it
won't have to
wouldn't.
worry.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, no. Yeah, over years we've reached out to Activision, trying to see if there was a way of buying Darkwatch back or licensing it or having somebody. It was never. That was dead before it even launched. Even the idea of it. So
Yeah, well, we will keep the legend of Darkwatch and Jericho Cross alive. We'll do it. We'll do it instead. You know.
thanks to thanks to the young generation that you're a part of. Thank you so much.
For sure. Yeah, well, I think that's a good note to end on. So I did have more questions. I could, I'm sure I could talk your ear off all day about, the Predator and the Lego game you worked on, but maybe some other time. Yeah, but
I love
yeah,
I love talking about that stuff. And if you want to set up another call, I would love to chat and talk. I call it talking shop. I'd love to talk shop with you.
For sure. Well, yeah. No, seriously though. Thanks so much for your time. Like, this was wonderful. This was awesome to like just hang out and chat. And
My pleasure. Thank you.
and yeah, looking forward to like seeing what you're working on next. So have a good rest of your night and happy Halloween.
Thank you very much. Likewise to you. And get out of your room, get some fresh air.
Will do. All right. Thanks, Farzad. Have a good night.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
You too, sir. Take care. Bye-bye.